Coming up on episode 19 of Creative Writing.
You're probably not going to bring anything entirely original to the table except yourself. And that's what we kind of are, just sort of filters.
I can't go back to sleep, it's almost light.
The sweet spot is that area right in the middle where you can actually earn a living out of something that you love to do, yet you can get better at.
One by one the stars are disappearing from the horizon.
Hello and welcome to episode 19 of the Creative Writing Podcast. I just realized this week as I was preparing to record this that I took out my sort of intro where I talk about what the podcast is when I changed to the new music, and I never added that back in. So I may have to do that. Not tonight, clearly, in this episode, because I'm not doing it. But the nice thing about that is I feel like, we're 19 episodes in, and I am just now kind of really figuring out what the podcast is. Like I went in thinking, I'm doing a podcast, this is what it's about. And it's similar to what I thought it was about, but it's also not. I started out thinking that it was a podcast for writers and creatives dealing with the passion and practice behind making good art. And I still agree with that. But I think that where I've shifted now and kind of seen what I'm most interested in and where it's kind of more headed is a podcast for writers and bloggers helping to build authentic, effective platform. So that's kind of my sweet spot and what I'm excited about. And you'll have to forgive my voice. I have some kind of, congestive thing. I had no voice a few weeks ago, and now I've got one that sounds a little raspy, but you may not be able to hear it. I can feel it in my own voice. But before we dive into the interview today, which is with Damian Farnworth of Copyblogger, I wanted to do a few quick bits of housekeeping for you. So I guess this isn't really housekeeping. These are just some things to be on the lookout for. And the first is that I'm going to let you guys know about something I just decided to do this week. It's not even up on the blog. So if you're interested, you will have to email me, Kirsten@KirstenOliphant.com, but I will soon have it up on the creativewriting.com blog. I am going to be offering a service as an email audit. And I already have brand audits, and those are, that's something I sell on the blog. And it's kind of like me going and taking a look at your entire sweeping platform and kind of giving you ideas of how to tweak and change and where to focus based on kind of where you are and where you want to be. But the email audits are going to be like a little mini audit of just your email. I'll go subscribe to your email on your site and kind of take a look around and see how easy it is to sign up and kind of the sign up process, the sign up forms, the welcome emails that I get or don't get, how things are customized, kind of get a week or two of seeing what you send out, and then kind of give you feedback and recommendations for how to better manage your email to get the most bang for your buck. So that is a service that I'm going to be offering for $50. And again, it's not on the blog. So if you're interested, just shoot me an email. My How to Build an Authentic Email course is currently closed, but I will be reopening. I don't know when yet. I think maybe 6 to 8 weeks. I'm going to I want to look at how the first people get through it and kind of my thoughts on it after some time. So if you're interested in that as well, email me and I can keep you apprised of when it's going to be coming back out. So the second part to that is if you are interested in email list building and all of that, I'm going to be doing a live training this Thursday, October 15th at 8 p.m. CST. And I'm going to be talking about growth and promotion. So, I'm not selling anything this week. There's no pitch for, anything I think you want. It's just me talking about growth and promotion, answering your questions, very low key, laid back, but hopefully informative and helpful chat. And you can find out more about that on the creativewriting.com website under live training, and you'll see that right under the big banner. Those are all the items to talk to you about before I get into this interview with Damian. And I'm really excited about this interview. So in episode 18 last week, I talked with Darren Rouse from Blogger, and now I have Damian Farnworth from Copyblogger. It feels like the attack of the bloggers, but in like the best way possible. So Damian is the chief content writer at Copyblogger, which is now under the giant umbrella of Rainmaker Digital. So I had to get, go all googly on that and try to figure that out because I kept running into Rainmaker and Copyblogger. But Copyblogger is a blog that's been around for a long time and is now under the Rainmaker Digital. But they have a lot of great platforms over there and things to do and a lot of great content. So I actually kind of got lost for way too much time this week over there reading things that Damian has written and just also the site in general. They have a lot of great freebies and a lot of great podcasts to listen to as well. So Damian, in addition to writing over there, is also the host of the Rough Draft podcast and the co-host of The Lead, L-E-D-E, podcast with Jared Morris. Damian also has a blog called The Copybot, and I loved this little bit that I got out of his About Me page, so I'm going to read that for you. So he started out, actually, he graduated with a degree in English with a minor in creative writing and wanted to be a poet, and then became a copywriter. So I want to read about what he had to say about this. So this is from The Copybot on his About page, and he says, "Cutting my teeth in the direct marketing business did a number on me. It cured me of ever wanting to write poetry again. How? I learned that ROI is everything. I learned that ROI demanded plain and persuasive copy, frequent and vigorous testing, and a hard-nosed attitude toward results. No ifs, ands, or buts. Thus, I was on the road to writing clear, concise, and compelling copy for the web." I love this because Damian is a poet, but he also is someone who understands sort of the tools that are needed to communicate well on the internet and how to use those tools and how to effectively reach people and build audiences. So we had a lot of fun talking today about being introverts and what effect that has on art. Damian and I are going to talk about being introverts, about what's going on in the internet and the digital landscape, which is like a catchphrase I like to say. So I hope you enjoyed this interview, and I'll see you on the flip side. Well, Damian Farnworth, welcome to the Creative Writing Podcast. I'm so glad to have you today.
Thank you so much, Kristen, for having me on the show.
Well, so you are the chief content writer over at Copyblogger, and that's kind of like a giant title. How did you get to be over there? And you also host the Rough Draft podcast. So you've got a lot of kind of awesome things going on. So where did you start with sort of your writing career and get to this point?
That's a good question. I've got to add to that list only because it's always pointed out to me that I always forget to mention that I also co-host The Lead with Jared Morris, which is a podcast about content marketing.
Awesome.
So yeah. So the question is, how did I get started?
Yes. And
Great.
kind of how did you get to where you are? Like, I mean, you don't have to start at birth or anything, just sort
Right.
of like.
So, well, I guess the middle length version of this story is like I've always loved poetry, and so when I graduated from college, I graduated from college with an English literature degree and creative writing minor, and so was looking for work because you can't really make money selling poetry. So someone introduced me to the marketing and advertising world, copywriting in general. I went to go work for a real estate marketing agency and a good friend of mine. And so he hired me on, and I fell in love with it. I mean, I've always been I was totally like anything that smacked of business, I turned my nose up to. So I kind of planned a career in the academic world, but having a wife who wanted to start a family, I'm not really prepared for that. So I got my start in there. I fell in love with it, and then fortunately, I was writing online the whole time. So I was doing all my work online. So I was able to test everything that I was doing, whether it was like Google text ads or longer form sales pages. And so I could know results of the things that I did within 24 hours and stuff. And so I was able then to adapt. And so being able to growing up online in that sense gave me a lot of, it helped me lower my learning curve as far as writing, because I got a lot of good feedback quickly, especially feedback through, also we're talking about comments and people responding to things. And then pretty much why I'm here where I'm at now with Rainmaker Digital, which was formerly Copyblogger, is back in April 2011, I quit my job then, which was in a huge nonprofit, but it was a very corporate setting, and I was not thriving at all. So I just sort of jumped ship and went to go work for myself. as a freelancer, but about 8 months in of working as a freelancer, though I was making more money than I'd ever had in my life, I hated it because I just didn't like the business end aspect of it. I hated when projects and relationships ended and then I had to find another project and build another relationship up, and I hated all that. So I started looking for another company to work for, but I was very selective. And then I was doing work for Copyblogger for quite some time, and then Brian just kind of came and said, "Hey, he sent me an email. It's like, are you looking for a full-time job?" And I was like, if you're offering, yes, absolutely. And so he hired me on as, I think original was as chief copywriter, but it's since morphed to the chief content writer, which means there's a little more responsibility there.
Well, and you have a ton of posts. I went through and I got like totally sucked into reading all of your posts, and I didn't read them all because I was like, there's so many pages. So I sort of bookmarked right. all the ones you'd written on there, and they were some really great posts. And what I love about the content that you have up there is you have kind of that perfect balance, which I love, of talking about writing as, an art and, kind of the inspiration side and passion side, but also like the really practical tools, which you cover both there and then also on the podcast, like dealing with things like SEO and, some of those words, a lot of people are like, the dirty words, but I love that stuff too, like the platform building tools and, thinking about what works, because if you don't know how to do that, you can't connect with your audience, right? Like you kind of have to know both things. So anyway, I just love that about your content. So I'm going to leave some links to some of my favorite things that I read in the show notes. Yeah. So we talked before the interview about the fact that we're both introverts, which, people, I don't know about you. People are always surprised when I tell them this because I'm not shy. I'm like totally fine having, conversations with people I don't know. I like talking with people on the podcast, all those things, because I think people still think that introverts are like shy people who just, hang out alone in like a hermit house or something. Although actually, I mean, a hermit house sounds really good now that I'm saying that, but I get that a lot, that people expect something different from introverts. They think of it, extroverts are outgoing and introverts are, they don't talk and stuff.
Sure.
So, you were mentioning a book that you were reading and kind of wanting to talk about, the impact of being an introvert on art. So I'd love to hear, what you're reading. You mentioned the book Quiet.
Yeah, so that's a great book. And like it took me forever because I think it was published in 2012. And so it should have been a book I read much earlier, but it's now, almost the end of 2015. And the book was recommended to me a number of times. That finally, it was like a raging extrovert who recommended that I read it because I was sitting in a art theater in Vancouver and getting ready to go up on a panel, and the guy in front of me reached out. His name is Tim Ash, and he said, "Hey, I saw you. You were on the panel, and I just wanted to say hi." And so we got talking. But he told me that like about this. We started speaking, and the subject of me being an introvert came up. And then he said, "Have you read that book? You should read that book, Quiet." And I was like, "Okay." And I was like, "Why did you read it?" And he's like, "Well, because an extreme extrovert said that I should, and it helped him understand him." I was like, "Oh, well, that's a very humane thing to do." So, and the thing is, I would have to say that I'm on the extreme end of introversion because I am shy, and I like the idea of being a hermit. Like, sounds like a really, really good idea to me. And I've always sort of lived by the code of the hills, which like one of my favorite writers has always been Emily Dickinson, who I think published maybe one poem in her entire life, but she has this 1,700 plus poems and lived at her home. And like that idea has always amazed me and always sort of inspired me, and just kind of like that's the way it's got to be. So, but the thing is, I bring that up because like when I went to go work for myself back in 2011, I would have never done it if it was not for the internet, because I realized I knew that I could go on. I wouldn't have to knock on doors. I wouldn't have to cold call people to find business. That I knew that I could do that all online without ever having to talk to anybody on the phone ever. So. I was, I think like the internet is particularly built for introverts because of our ability to email just about anybody we want, and the rejection of being ignored by the email is not as nearly as bad as being a rejection, in person on the phone. So,
yeah, that's true. That's true. I feel like I have this, digital world that I've built up of all these like people I would call friends, even that I've never met. I may never meet them, and. I was trying to think about that. And as you were talking, I was realizing, because, I think that's a little weird, even though I'm like, I don't care that it's weird. Like, that's how it is. And my husband's like, he thinks that's a little weird. And, but as you were talking, I was kind of thinking about why that is and what you were explaining. And for me, having those relationships also, there's that low risk, but it doesn't take the energy because it's not in person.
Right.
It doesn't take away the energy from me the way it does to interact with people. Like I just got done going to like 2 or 3 conferences kind of in a row. And I do love conferences, but there were several times, there was one during the middle of like the Saturday sessions, and I was like, I really want to go to this, but if I hear any more people talking and have to sit next to a person, I'm going to die. And so I went up to the room and just, wrote for like 2 hours and skipped out of some of the stuff. And I'm like, I paid for this, but I can't take in anymore because I can't be around people. So I had to go recharge, and then it's, like a phone, I'm going to recharge and then coming back down so I can handle the people. But I love talking to people. It takes so much out of me. Like I can't even explain it. So
I love the one-on-one interaction with people, and I love, learning about people, people I just think are complex and complicated. And, so it's like, if we can get past that small talk, then, I think we can talk about some deep, meaningful things. And the other thing too, about like online and email and chat is that you can control that. Like when you're with a live body, like you have to, be focused. And I think the polite thing is to be very focused upon them. And there's, and you have to manage that. And so I think like the emotional labor that's involved in in-person meetings way more high than like, responding by email or by chat or something like that. So.
Yeah, definitely. And, there's things that get lost. Like I definitely have a few people I talk with online, and we constantly misunderstand each other. Like the way, that these people write and the way that I write, like we are just missing each other. There's something getting lost in the translation. But generally speaking, it works pretty easily. And it doesn't have kind of that emotional, it doesn't take the same kind of toll. And I'd be interested to read that book. Does she talk about, kind of, is it just introverts in general? Does she talk about introverts in art? Because I'm really kind of interested also in introverts and writing and in art.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, she does, because, introverts tend to be more creative than extroverts. At least they tend towards the creative pursuits because of, as she points out, like innovation and creativity. Like solitude is kind of essential to get to that point where, an extroverted life is less tuned to solitude, and so you have to be comfortable you have to be comfortable with solitude in order to be have the creative. And the other thing too she talks about, which I think is great, like she mentions it's a popular study that's mentioned. I don't remember who ran it, but the result of it was this idea of deliberate practice, where like violinists, like who are fair, who are good, and then who are really good. Those who were in the good and the really good practice alone like 3.5 hours a day on very specific stuff. And the point behind that was this idea that like if you're trying to practice within a group, there's a lot of sort of dead time, and you may be you're not working on things that naturally you're weak at that you might want to focus on. So having that solitude allows you to focus. Okay, this is what I'm going to work on today very specifically. So the superior, the really good, and the superior violinists are those who have an enormous an inordinate amount of time during the day in which they practice solo. They work on their art. So that's as a writer, an online writer. Because, I'm definitely more of the artist than I am sort of the business person. But I've learned that like you've got, you're going to, you got to let more people asking, like, to be practical. Like, how can I be practical about like, okay, I want this to be beautiful and I want this to be good. And some people like don't even care about that though. I mean, honestly, they just want like, tell me what it is, get to the facts, and let's move on. But that's clearly not my audience, it's just, and I think that's the thing too about writing online, writing in general is like finding your sweet spot, like where you're comfortable writing about things, but at the same time where you kind of create a viable audience. And it goes back to the idea of like the hedgehog concept, where it's like you find what's your passion, what's economically viable, and can you get better? Can you get better at that passion? So the sweet spot is that area right in the middle where you can actually earn a living out of something that you love to do, yet you can get better at.
Yeah, and that sweet spot I think is, pretty much what we're all trying to find, and it's very elusive. So if you figure out the secret, let me know. But
I will tell you this: it's just about experimenting, really. It's just like, and I think that's like my whole career has been kind of. If you look at all my work from the Copybot to the Copyblogger, everything that I've done, everything has been like I'm always asking the question, I wonder if, I'm like, so I wonder if I read an article about this. I wonder if I open with this. I wonder if this headline would work. I wonder if this topic would work. I wonder if I, joined Medium and started publishing on there, that like, what kind of traction would I get? That's pretty much been the story of my career.
Well, I love that idea also of experimenting because, I'm joking when I tell you if you figure out the secret, tell me, because there is no secret, right? Like,
I don't know. Yeah.
I'm so tired of like my big pet peeve this year has, as I've been kind of building this podcast and a new platform out of my old blog, which is still up and running, because also the thing is adaptation, it's always like adapting to what's happening and letting things move organically, which is fun. But, there's no formula, and there are all these people out there selling formulas, and, I'm not going to name names, but I'm thinking of you, and not
right.
you, but I'm thinking of them.
Right.
Where they say, well, this is the secret to online success. This is how you're going to get 10,000 email subscribers. This is how you're going to achieve this or that. And I listen, and then I sort of look at what they're actually doing. And a lot of them, I'm like, oh, I see how you got 10,000 subscribers by telling people how to get 10,000 subscribers.
Right.
That's how you did it. And like, but that's not what you're saying. That's like what you did, but that's not what you're saying. And so I'm really wary of kind of the formulas, but I do love to hear what works for people. And then I think kind of the important thing is to figure out, well, okay, then what works for me? Because I'm different. And also my audience is different. There's no, two audiences that are really the same. There was some overlap and that kind of thing, but what will connect with those people is not, my people, they might really like you and like your podcast and like your writing, but they're not going to be exactly your audience, right? So anyway, so the sweet spot, I guess, is singular, for each of us to figure out.
Well, it is true. And I think, like you've kind of, like this idea of being comfortable in your own skin and because it's the sort of perennial struggle is like finding your voice, like who are you? And that's what a lot of times eventually what it kind of boils down to when we're talking about, whether it's, starting a blog or a podcast or something like that, is that, you're probably not going to bring anything entirely original to the table except yourself, and that's why you always owe it to yourself and to your audience is to do things that you like and to experiment. And if you don't know what it is, that's why a lot of times I've been experimenting. Like my life has been like sort of a process of elimination of like not like stop doing things I don't enjoy doing and stuff until you get to a point where like I really enjoy this and it seems to respond, like an audience still responds. And it may take a while. Some people find it sooner than others. Other people it takes a lot longer, but be patient.
And then I think it's hard too when you want to change and evolve, because that happens. Like we're never finished products, right? We're always kind of changing and adapting both, because of and within the environment, that we're in. And so taking those people with you, as long as you go and, building, you want to build that audience that will go wherever you want to go. But it's hard. I found this year, so, as we were talking before the interview, I've got a lifestyle blog that I have, and I have readers there. And I started a new blog that's more for writers and bloggers and kind of talking about building authentic platform, because I get really excited about that. And my readers in my lifestyle blog were not excited, like whenever I talked about that stuff. And so that's why I kind of moved over. And a lot of them came with me, but I can't make everybody like all the things I like, because I like a lot of weird stuff. And so it's all over the place. But, you kind of want to get to that place where you find that audience of super fans who are like, I don't care where you go, I'm going, I'm along for the ride. And, so that's something I think of is trying to find and connect with that audience that's going to go with me. And they're like, it doesn't really matter what you're talking about. I'll listen to your podcast, because I like you, you're the center. And so that's, and that sounds really egotistical, and that's not at all what I mean. It's more kind of like you said, like there's nothing original, only you, like only your voice kind of presenting it. And I always think about that because I get stressed out over, I've been reading a lot of Medium lately, and like, I was like, can I put something up there? And then I was like, no, I have nothing new to say. But, back in like the Bible times, Solomon in Ecclesiastes talked about how there's nothing new under the sun. And if there was nothing new under the sun back then,
it's an age-old problem.
There's nothing new now.
Problem.
There's new technologies and new things, but there's nothing truly new, like ideas and these things. But, so
The only thing that changes is like, really as writers, as podcasters, anytime, is we're really just kind of filters, whether it's like we're talking, as a novelist or a podcaster or a poet or a journalist, it's like we're taking information, themes, ideas, and then, then expressing them through the our worldview and through the way we see the world and through the way we think about things. So really, I mean, that's what we kind of are, just sort of filters. And so what's on one end comes out differently, but that difference is is dependent upon who you are and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, and thinking about like that in a visual sense, looking, you walk through an art museum and you walk through the different periods of history. A landscape is a landscape, but it sure looked a lot different when Van Gogh painted it.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, well, I want to know kind of from you, since you're kind of in tune with all these things and you're in the online world creating all this content, like what are you most excited about in this, kind of current place that we are with whatever that is? I don't even know how to even sum it up, but in the current place, like this digital landscape, like what excites you about sort of the filters and the different things of content creation?
I think just the ability to be able, because it's getting easier and easier to be publishers of content, whether it's podcasts or videos or, blogs. We've known about blogs for quite some time, but now just in the last 2 or 3 years, podcasting has sort of erupted. And part of that is because technology on both ends, from the publishers to the audience side, has made it easier to consume, to create, and then to consume that content. And then, of course, with videos, I think there are YouTube stars who are more popular than a lot of celebrities out of Hollywood or TV land, and so I like that possibility, because I think as someone who's a creator, it's like what can I do next? Like what can I do? Like, because I'm always thinking about how do I express myself and how do I do that like with a topic that's I've never approached before and at least never published before and stuff. So I like the ability that there's so many tools out there that makes it pretty darn easy for us to do that.
Yeah, I've been really loving some of the new things. Like I really liked Periscope at first, and I haven't really done that as much. Like I said about the formulas, like I got really tired of the Periscope people all telling me how to Periscope, so I just had to shut it down. Right. But I've been doing weekly blabs with some friends who are bloggers and just talking about blogging tips and that kind of thing.
On Periscope?
On Blab.
Oh, okay. What is Blab?
Oh, Blab is so much fun. So it's it's kind of like a Google Hangout. I heard someone actually describe it as a Google Hangout on steroids. And so it's like it's a live streaming app, and like Periscope, except you can have up to 4 people at a time. You can't just have one, so you at least have to have 2.
Okay.
And it sets it up almost like an online panel. And you can leave a seat open and then let your people jump on. Like people can ask to come on, and you can have them, and then their face will pop up like in a little square. It kind of looks like the Brady Bunch with 4 people. And so they can jump on and ask questions. There's also comments as well, kind of like Periscope. So there's like a running stream, but a lot of people, you can do it on your phone, but it's a lot easier to do kind of sitting in front of your computer. So it's almost like setting up like a live panel of experts in a sense.
Okay.
And you can talk about whatever. So it's really fun. And, it has that sort of exciting live streaming, fresh quality where it's just whatever's going to happen is going to happen. Like I did one.
Interesting.
Yeah. I did one 2 weeks ago with these girls, and I was the person who had started it. So I was the one who was allowing people on. And so you don't know who the people are jumping on necessarily. And so someone asked to get on. Yeah. So I said, okay. And it was like a girl in a middle school cafeteria with her friend, and they were like on their cell phone, and they joined the Blab and just sat there and giggled. And like, it was live. So I had to sort of like extricate us from the conversation. It was really funny. And she's like, well, I can't hear you very well. Thanks for joining. Goodbye.
Right.
And got him out. But that's really fun because, you can talk to other people, but it's a really cool way to interact, that you can actually let other people come on and their face pops up and you can kind of join in. So that definitely check Blab out if you haven't. But it is fun to kind of look at the new things. And, I kind of stick to I find I try things, and then I find the ones, that seem to work for me. And I'm still open on that. I don't know. I'm not going to say I'll never Periscope again. I think, I actually think I'm going to do I don't even know how you say it, the NaNoWriMo November writing month next month, and I thought it would be pretty fun to do like a daily Periscope and kind of like encouragement, and also like, and today also sucked, whenever that happens, just for other people in that community. So I'm not writing off any of the forums. It's fun to try them and then see, because there are people, like I was saying, your people will go with you some places and some won't. And some of the people that are with me, even on the new site, and even some of my best friends are like, oh yeah, but I just don't listen to podcasts. And I'm like, okay, it's not hard, but you're not going to take all your audience to different places, and you might pick up some new people. Like I probably have people that listen to the podcast that had no idea who I was before. So,
well, I think that's the key, is that when you look at, sort of moving into these new arenas, is that it's all about really finding a new audience. And that was a major complaint, with Google Plus is like, but nobody I know hangs out here. It's like, well, there's a lot of jokes been made about Google Plus, but at the time, and a lot, it's like, I met a lot of new people from that, avenue. And same thing with like podcasting. It's like, the reason that we went the podcasting route, although we had even though we have a huge audience back on Copyblogger blog, is that we wanted the iTunes audience. There's a whole untapped world there of people who do kind of, consume voraciously and ferociously consume podcasts, and so we wanted to tap into that market too, and to tap into that audience. And so, that's the attitude that you need to have when you're going into those new tools and technology.
And when I've had this, I love that. I think that's just a perfect way to describe what it is that we're doing. We go to these different places is trying to connect with a new audience. And I've talked to a lot of writers. I go to a lot of blogging conferences. I actually went to Podcast Movement this summer, but I talked to a lot of writers. I went to a writing conference, and the writers who are just wanting to write books, so many of them, they just sort of scoffed at the, idea of platform building. And like, they just like, oh, well, I don't want to have a blog. Wow, I don't want to have to be on Twitter, and
sure.
And that does not represent everybody, but it was a lot of people that I talked to at this conference. And I was kind of surprised because to me, and this is kind of how I framed it for them when we were talking, because I love that stuff. Like I get really excited about it. And I was like, it's just connecting with your people. It's just finding the people that want to read your work. Why wouldn't you want to connect with them? Like, it's so easy now in a way that it wasn't years ago. And then the flip side of that is now you're expected. I interviewed a publisher a couple months ago, and he was saying, well, for nonfiction, we really want, you to have like 10,000 people on your email list. 5,000 would make us pay attention. And, that was just kind of a fact. And that doesn't mean you won't get published, but that's a pretty huge number for a lot of people, especially if you're not into platform building, And so you turn up your nose at that, and then you try to send something out to a publisher, you're going to have a harder time. So that's the flip side, is now you're expected because it's so easy to be able to do it. And
that's the truth. Yeah, that's the truth.
So I try to do it and then enjoy it. But, when I start to think about the numbers, then I start to get like a little heebie-jeebies and have to kind of just step back and like, it's people. I'm connecting with people. Well, are there any aspects of kind of the, current place that we're at that you wish would just get out of here? Like, I know you said, you didn't say this about Google Plus, but I know a lot of people felt that way about Google Plus. But, are there any things that just are driving you nuts about the current kind of place that we're in?
There are a lot of things that drive me nuts, but I guess like the best way probably to put it would to say, I think that I'm always really kind of I don't want to say irritated, but the thing about like the internet and social media, it's just, I think it's so good at bringing out the worst in people and stuff. So you have to be so, and that's the part that I wish I would go away, because it's like Facebook. I have a Facebook account, but I never ever look at the stream. I just, post stuff actually from Instagram, and just it goes over there, and I might occasionally check my notifications or messages, because I don't want to deal with the, sort of the drama that goes on there. And it's like what James L. Toucher, he calls outrage porn. And that's what, that like people, and like people are outraged about things they know nothing about, because they read 1/10 of an article or watch 1/10 of a video, and then they have their opinion. They're off, like dashing something off. And so it's like, so the fact that, the downside of having all the availability, all these free tools, is that, I think some not very smart, non-thinking people, get a hold of them and say really dumb things. And so then it kind of clogs. And then for me, it puts a, foul kind of taste in my mouth, and it leaves, like it kind of, I'm always flirting with the idea of just like, abandoning it all and just like, leaving the online world and just sticking to the offline stuff. But I just know that's not feasible. Does that make sense? Do you struggle with that?
I do. I think for me, like the mob mentality that happens online, I find really disheartening. And, especially recently there's always some new event that's creating that. But the one that really got to me was sort of the Cecil the Lion. And it's not even about whatever you think about, that hunter shooting the lion or not. It was the fact that, agree or disagree, whether he broke the law or didn't break the law, like that man's life is ruined, at least for some, like, I don't even know how long, because people went and published like his personal address and his personal business address online. And I don't know what's happening with him now, but, I know he had to stop working. He may have quit. I stopped following the story because it was making me feel sick. But like the fact that we could sort of, people take it up to be like the judge, jury, and executioner online, and that there's the power to create a kind of mob that you can connect with people in a way that's really, really negative. So yeah, that drives me nuts. And I also, like, on a less large scale, less important scale, I get annoyed by, kind of as I mentioned with the formulas, like I feel like there's this whole circle of people, and, I listen to a lot of entrepreneurs because they help me with the business stuff that I don't get. Because that part that I don't get. And so I like that. And it gets me kind of excited and like, okay, I think I can wrap my head around this, like in my own way, like I can handle this. But the sort of entrepreneurs who sell being an entrepreneur to other entrepreneurs who are selling it to entrepreneurs, like that whole cycle, I'm like, okay, this is, like it's got to stop, that kind of annoys me. And so every now and then I have to pull back. Me too. So for me, it's about, I got to find the balance between, I love sort of the inspiration. I love thinking about writing. I love talking like this, like having these kinds of conversations. And then also having the nuts and bolts, like, okay, now here is how you use Twitter. Like straight up, here are tools that you can use to help you do this better.
Right.
Because if there's too much inspiration kind of stuff and just talking about like ideas, I start to get, I don't know, I need to have some kind of like real practical nuts and bolts stuff as well. So for me, I'm trying to find like kind of that sweet spot of having both, because I like them both together in my world. Yeah. So I'm always kind of trying to find that balance of like, what I listen to in podcasts, for example, or what I read, like trying to find the, reading something about how I can be a better business person and like things like sales funnels, which I don't even know what that means, but, trying to learn about that, but then also reading really good writing, so that's where I try to live.
I agree. Me too.
Well, I always like to end my interviews asking people what is inspiring them this week. And I feel like we covered a whole lot of things, but maybe there's something in here. And again, it doesn't have to be like super fancy, like high art. It can be very, I've had people say the Backstreet Boys, and that's okay. If there's a reason, that's okay. But yeah, what's inspiring you this week?
I would say this week and probably every week really is music. And I don't know if you get that question or that answer a lot, but yeah. So, and just probably I've had a steady diet of sad songs. So it's one of those things where which is why I love Spotify, is because it's like, I can it's like, your own personal 11 million song album bin, and so you can just kind of indulge in that. So yeah. I've just sort of been listening to a lot of kind of older music like Depeche Mode and Daniel Johnson and John Grant, which is actually new, but which is all kind of like sort of morbid, sad kind of stuff. But I find that incredibly inspiring and beautiful at times. So
that's really fun. You'd appreciate this probably. My favorite, if I'm writing fiction, my favorite playlist that I have on my iPod, but it's I named it Moody and Mellow, and it's just like, it's like Jeff Buckley, and there's some Portishead, and really, that kind of stuff. I have to kind of, because I write dark fiction, and so I kind of have to like, which is why it's hard with kids. Right? Like I have to go into this dark place and then come back and be like, "Hey, children, how are you?" And then like, put on the Moody and Mellow playlist when they're like sleeping and stuff. Why is your music so sad, mommy? That doesn't work very well. So, well, Damian, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. This was so fun just to have a conversation about, being introverts and about art and kind of also the digital world and those kinds of tools. So I really enjoyed it. I love your podcast and your work. So I'm going to leave links to all that stuff, and just really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me on your show.
And October's almost over, and the dark nights are closing in again.
Okay, so what did you think of Damian? I loved having this conversation with him and just getting to chat. I felt like I was talking kind of with an old friend who kind of understands the world that I'm in right now with writing and being online and platform building and all those kinds of things. So Damian is a wealth of knowledge. I'm linking to some of my favorite things that he's written that I found in the show notes, which you can find at createifwriting.com/019. But he had so many things. I mean, it was pages and pages of great pieces on Copyblogger, and that's only Copyblogger. He's also got the podcast Rough Draft and the Copybot, his own blog. So there's so many things you need to check out from him. Really great inspiration, really great tools for growth. And, I just kind of left this interview wanting to go out and really connect deeper. And there was really good recent podcast on The Lead all about going deeper with your audience. And you know that I'm doing a 31-day series. I've been mentioning this, so you can find that on the blog as well. But I'll link to their podcast episode with Jared Morris and Damian, all about going deeper with your audience as well. And I'd love to hear from those of you who are extroverts who are listening. Tell me in the comments what you think about all this buzz about introvert. Head over to the show notes, createifwriting.com/019. Love to hear from you. And as always, have an inspired week.